Hello, and thanks for joining me today. My name is Jeff, and you're listening to episode 3 of the Comic Book of the Day podcast. All right. This is episode 3 of the Comic Book of the Day podcast, and today we are going to talk about the Bible. You heard me right. That is correct. We are going to discuss the Bible. Specifically, we are going to talk about DC Comics Limited Collector's Edition. It looks like this is C36 in the numbering. Limited Collector's Edition presents the most spectacular stories ever told from the Bible. That's right. Here on the cover, I've got Noah's Ark, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, the creation story, the Tower of Babel, and Sodom and Gomorrah. Juicy, salacious stuff there. It's got a great wraparound cover by Joe Kubert, who is the artist inside as well. This is Moses coming down from the mountain with stone tablets, right? So on the front, he's carrying stone tablets that represent the 10 Commandments, and when you flip the book over in his other hand, he's carrying a staff. And it's a very Charlton Heston-esque Moses. Lots of flowy white hair. Definitely card-carrying member of the NRA, this cat. So this is really cool. I remember this is earlier than when I began collecting comics. Like, I think previously we had talked about Flash 273 being one of the first comics that I ever, bought. So that was in May of 1979, and this was actually released in 1975 at some point, right? So this is 1975. It looks like June, July of 1975. So this would have been the summer of 1975, and it is a Treasury edition. So I remember, special comics were stuff that I could swing from aunts and uncles and moms and dads and people who at the time had money and would give me 65 cents or $1 or 50 cents. I think, when I try to remember this, I believe my first encounter with this was in Lancaster, South Carolina. When I used to go to Lancaster, South Carolina, which is just over the border from Charlotte, North Carolina. So just over the border, about maybe 45 minutes or an hour or so south into South Carolina. And it's where my mom was raised. And so my aunt, who was my mom's sister, lived there with my grandfather, right, her father, on a farm in Lancaster. And I used to, whenever I would go and stay with my aunt, I would have to do chores. So I remember I would, pick stuff from the garden or clean up or set the table or do odds and ends and tasks, help around the house. And I would get spending money, and then I could go spend. I could go to the dollar store, the 88-cent store at the time it was called, and pick out things to buy. And I remember getting this. I don't know the circumstances of, again, getting the money, but I do remember getting this because my aunt at the time, Carolyn was her name. She's actually, she's the aunt that my daughter is somewhat named after. Her middle name is, I remember her being sort of skeptical that this was really a comic book about the Bible. And at the time, I probably would have been, 8 years old or so, 8 or 9 years old around this time. And I recall being, at a certain point, being very interested in Old Testament Bible studies, or Old Testament Bible stories, I mean. I remember having, I think it was a children's Bible. The Old Testament has all of the best stories. It has all of the drama happens in the Old Testament when you're a kid. You've got Noah's Ark, Adam and Eve, snakes, right? Cain and Abel. You've got murder and intrigue. You got Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, how much more, sinister and salacious does it get when you're 8 or 9 years old? The Tower of Babel. the creation story, all of that kind of epic, grand storytelling that you tend to fall for when you're a little kid. So I was a big fan of the Old Testament, and I remember thumbing through this book. This is really a great book. This is again, it's a Treasury edition, which means that the physical size of this book is about 10 inches by 13 inches. So this is a large book to hold, right? It's like a giant, oversized tabloid book. And at the time, the cover price is $1. So this is $1 for a book in 1975. Now, these Treasury editions are really cool. They were printed for about a decade or so on both sides. Both DC and Marvel printed tabloid editions. But the DC tabloid editions ran, I believe, for much longer, and there's significantly more of them out there. The most famous one being Superman versus Muhammad Ali, which I've got as well. I have, over the last few years, or probably 5 or 6 years, put together a complete run of the DC tabloid comics, because I went through a tabloid phase, and I was able to put together a complete set of all of these tabloid comics that DC published in the 70s. They're great books. I love them. There's reprints of Detective 27, Action Comics #1. There's the famous Superman versus Muhammad Ali that we talked about earlier. There are multiple team up books. I think Batman and Hulk. This was where the cross company team ups in the 70s took place. So when Superman and Spider-Man teamed up together, they actually teamed up together in a tabloid 10 by 13 size, oversized book. And they ran about $1, $1.50, $2, $2.50, whatever. But they were big and they were oversized, and they didn't fit in comic book spinner racks. So you had to typically find them at newsstands, magazine stands, which meant that they were thumbed through, right? They had been sort of heavily picked through, and they usually have their spines bent. They've been handled a lot. So it's really hard to put together a nice collection of these books in really good shape. And I'm fortunate that this is one of them that's in really good shape. So as you're thumbing through the book, it's just filled with, amazing artwork of, the Tower of Babel, Sodom and Gomorrah, Noah and the flood, Cain and Abel. Really awesome artwork. The snake in Adam and Eve looks, terrifying and menacing. It looks more like a dragon than a snake, but it's definitely something that if you were, 8 or 9 years old reading this, you would have completely, flipped your gourd over this. And the scene here where Adam and Eve realize that they're, naked for the first time, sort of, amazing stuff when you're younger. It's like reading National Geographic, I suppose, and running across naked people in National Geographic. But anyway, that's the Bible, 1975. Let's see, 1975, around the time that this movie or this comic book was out. If you were to go to the movies, you'd be able to catch Monty Python and the Holy Grail. That's pretty awesome, right? Summer of 1975. Return of the Pink Panther. Let's see, Jaws in June. If you were watching movies around the summer, June of 1975, this would have been, the biggest blockbuster movie of the summer would have been playing, Jaws. So, anyway, great summer for movies. If we were to look over at the Billboard charts for this year, I'm not really sure. Let's see. The Hot 100 singles for 1975 would have been Captain and Tennille, Love Will Keep Us Together, Rhinestone Cowboy, Glenn Campbell, Elton John, Philadelphia Freedom, love that song, that's a great song. Before the Next Teardrop Falls, Freddie Fender, Frankie Valli's My Eyes Adored You, Earth, Wind, and Fire, Shining Star, that's number 6. In the top 100 for 1975. David Bowie is number 7 with Fame. Neil Sedaka, Laughter in the Rain. Number 9 is the Eagles with One of These Nights. And then number 10 is good old John Denver with Thank God I'm a Country Boy. So that's the Billboard Hot 100 for 1975. If you were watching TV, you'd have a choice of All in the Family, Rich Man, Poor Man, Laverne and Shirley. That was out in 1975, 76. Maude, The Bionic Woman, a great spinoff of The Bionic Man. Was a big fan. I think The Bionic Woman, if I remember correctly, had a bionic ear, and The Bionic Man had the bionic eye. So I was a big fan of that one. Sanford and Son. I think my fondest memory was Red Fox with the fake heart attack. I think that was probably the thing that I would remember most. And then $6 Million Man and Happy Days, rounding out the top 10 television programs for this time period. So thanks again. Thanks for listening. Today's comic book, The Bible, DC Comics, limited collector's edition, oversized 10 by 13. Visit comicbookoftheday.com to get a glance at the cover. See what this book looks like if you want. I can give you a little, you get to see a little bit of the wraparound cover, the Joe Kubert wraparound cover. Comicbookoftheday.com. You can follow us on Twitter at CBoftheday. You can catch us on Instagram at Instagram.com. We are Comic Book of the Day on Instagram. We are on Facebook as well, Facebook.com/Comic Book of the Day. So if you want to keep up with us by any means necessary, you can catch us on all of your favorite social media. Until we see each other again tomorrow. I believe tomorrow we are going to be jumping into some Neil Adams Green Lantern territory. So that looks to be pretty cool. I will see and talk to all of you again tomorrow. Thanks again. Goodbye.